So when I started this podcast, my goal was to create a lot of great mortgage stories where people have gotten through really tough times in the mortgage industry, and then gradually things have changed to where sometimes we talk mortgage and other times we dive into life. I have got today my guest, Sara Keller, a good friend of mine, where we're going to talk a little bit about mortgage, but mostly about life. And I promise you, if you stay to the end of this conversation, it will affect you. It's definitely going to be a good one. So here we go. This conversation is going to be very interesting because I've interviewed a lot of people. I don't know that I've interviewed anybody that I'm closer friends with than you. So interviewing a friend, I hope I'm good. I hope I'm like not, lost in the interview a little bit. But Sara, thank you for coming out knowing nothing about what we're going to talk about.
You're welcome. Yeah, this is all a surprise.
And you rocked the overalls today, which I think is really cool.
I did.
So
anything less wouldn't be me.
I think so. I think you're right. Yeah. You got to be you. And I think we'll probably get that theme as we talk. You've never really tried to be anything but yourself.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Well, and I don't like to fit the mold.
Right.
You know that.
Mm-hmm.
But I get to be me and not fit the mold.
Yeah. So let's talk for a second about where you are right now. And then let's go back and talk about some of the things that made you who you are today. So that people who are listening know you are a rock star loan officer doing more loans than most people are doing.
I'm doing okay.
And yeah, you weren't always a rock star loan officer, but currently you do a ton of loans. You have a really good reputation in the business. You have developed this and struggled and fought for everything you've got. From what I've seen,
yes.
I don't want to tell your story for you, but everything has been you just climbing and climbing and climbing and doing the things that you want to do and being who you are. And that's worked out to make you really a true success in the mortgage industry.
Yes, you've got that part.
But I think the first time we ever met, I don't know if this was the first time we met, but it was the first time we ever spent any sort of time talking down in Oregon. I learned you weren't always all this just put together loan officer that's crushing it.
The first time we met?
Yeah.
When you were speaking for a mortgage company.
Yeah.
And then we ended up sitting and talking afterwards.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah. That was when I found out you weren't always this rock star loan officer. Like, I don't know when I meet people. Like,
right.
You meet somebody and they're doing great and you're like, oh, this person's probably always had it together.
Well, and when we met, I was still processing home loans.
Right.
I wasn't working as a loan officer.
Mm-hmm. So you were just kind of coming up in the industry.
I was.
Take us back a little bit. So you didn't just like become an amazing loan officer. You started where?
23 years ago, which I know because Aiden's almost 24. My daughter is almost 24. So I know that I started 23 years ago and I was a single mom, really, really struggling. I had her by myself, have raised her by myself. But when she was really little, at first I was working several different jobs, just trying to be home and be her mom as much as possible. I was nannying and I was working at Gold's Gym because I could bring her with me. And I was waiting tables at restaurants periodically. It was kind of this patchwork of jobs so that I could try to be with her as much as possible. And my mom kept telling me if I would just get a full-time job, everything would be okay. Like, just work full-time, everything will be fine. Mm-hmm. And so I get a job at a mortgage company. I don't actually know what a mortgage is. Mm-hmm. And I go as a marketing assistant to this young loan officer. Can I say his name?
Yeah.
Dustin Hughes.
Oh my gosh.
It's
really?
my first job.
I did not know that.
I'm an assistant. I'm highlighting loan application packets. And I don't even know what a mortgage is.
Wow.
And I'm making $1,500 a month. I have no health insurance. I have to put Aiden in like the cheapest home daycare I can possibly find, which doesn't seem safe. Mm-hmm. I literally like have $42 left at the end of each month after I've paid rent, paid daycare, and whatever I had a little car loan. And I was miserable because before that job in mortgage, I had food stamps and WIC, women, infant, children, and I had a daycare subsidy. And the minute I was making $1,500, I lost all of those things.
Oh my gosh.
So life was so hard.
And you had $42 at the end.
Of the month.
Wow.
And it was miserable.
But I learned about more.
It was a full-time job. But then the crazy thing with mortgage is once you learn a few things in mortgage, you can like never get out.
Right.
That's it.
It's like a gang. You can try, but they have to jump you out. And even when they do, you come back.
I got laid off from that job eventually when that first slowdown happened, right around 9/11.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There was that first kind of market crash and I got laid off from that job. And then I thought I'd go back to school. And then I couldn't I really couldn't figure out what to do. And I ended up just right back at a mortgage company, working as an assistant for a loan officer that had just left a big company to do his own thing. And really, honestly, learned so much from him. Like learned everything I think I could about home loans.
By the way, Dustin Hughes, I'm trying to get him on the podcast.
Are you?
So far, he said no.
So hopefully he's listening to this.
I hope so. He said no so far. But if you're out there, Dustin, we want you on this podcast. He has one of the greatest
Dustin,
stories.
you have a story.
Yeah, that needs to be shared. I mean, it's amazing getting people's stories out there because it identifies and it connects with people that are watching. And I've always said, like, your story is more meaningful when people are learning from the things that you've been through. And
I think one of the stories unite us. There's this huge, my thing when I meet clients or meet anyone is tell me your story, because I feel like we could really not like someone, not know much about them, judge them, dislike them in our own heads. And you hear someone's story and you find something you connect with and it changes everything. Once you hear someone's story, I think there's always something I have in common with another human.
Totally. So let's go back further in your story.
Okay.
You were born where?
In Portland.
And so you're born in Portland,
Portland, Oregon. My mom and dad are still there. I grew up in Lake Oswego and didn't fit the mold then either.
I was going to say Lake Oswego doesn't lead to food stamps normally.
No. And it doesn't lead to being single and pregnant and making all the choices that I don't know that you're not supposed to, or what people didn't see as good choices. So
was that always like a thing? Were you always making choices that people challenged, or or that people wouldn't see as what they would have done?
I want to tell you no, but then I think I was a really good kid, but then a wild teenager. I definitely was always doing what I was told not to do. And always lying about it also.
Oh, yeah. I think it's awesome that a muscle car just started up right outside. Like, this is normally such a quiet studio. And then I said, have you always made choices? It's like, brrr. Like, it's a green muscle car out there. Yeah.
I think I probably have always pushed the envelope and I've always done things the way I wanted to do them, even when those were really difficult things. It feels like I have always done everything backwards in my life. Or that's what I've seen. Like everyone else does things forward. They're like, I'll meet someone or I'll go to college and then I'll meet someone and then I'll get married and then I'll start a family. And I'm like, let me see how many of these things I can do in complete and total reverse.
Wow.
I think that's what it's always felt like for me.
What, I'm trying to frame my question for you. You're so strong as an individual. Have you always been an individual? Like, has it always been you against the world kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Did we say we were going to cry on this?
We can. It would be the third time I've cried on a podcast.
I think that, yes, and maybe that's one of my struggles is I still find myself a single person, even if I've had relationships, that I am incredibly independent. And that started a long time ago. I was hiking and backpacking and things on my own in my late teens and early 20s. You made this very blunt decision to have my daughter, keep my daughter when I got pregnant with her, when everyone else was making a different decision. I mean, we can go there.
We can dive into that.
Do you want to just go there?
They should hear the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once upon a time, I was 22 years old and working in clubs in Portland and strip clubs and found myself pregnant. And I think when you see somebody from the outside, maybe living that life and then getting pregnant and keeping that, I can see why people looked at me and were like, wow, you're a loser. You are not making very good decisions with your life right now, including my family. I can understand why people thought those were really bad decisions. I could have done without maybe having some of those things said to my face about them not being good decisions.
So people didn't just disagree. They straight to your face.
Absolutely. And some people really close to me. And so I think when we talk about, have I always been incredibly independent or have I just been this strong individual? Yes. I mean, I, at that point in time, was doing something most people wouldn't have decided to do, set my mind to it. I honestly, to tell you, like, I was driving. I knew I was pregnant. It was devastating. I had made this appointment to terminate that pregnancy, and I was driving behind G.I. Joe's. I was going to G.I. Joe's. If you remember G.I. Joe's?
Yeah, the sporting goods store.
Best automotive sporting goods store that ever existed. And I was nowhere near G.I. Joe's, and I was crying in my car, and I was upset. And all of a sudden, just a light bulb came on, and I was like, wait a sec. I can do this if I want to. I'm a smart person. I can have this baby, and I can do this. And I never looked back. And
you were literally on the way?
I'm just driving in my car. Like, I'm running errands, but I'm crying because I'm upset. And I never looked back. And I think that's a lot of my life, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know when we want to fast forward to my life in a van now, but it's those same, maybe, I don't know, understand what the driving things are for me, even other than I set my mind to something and I make that happen. And that doesn't mean there wasn't just an incredible amount of hardship when it came to having Aiden, and especially her young years.
Mm-hmm. Before we get to her young years, like, so I want to focus on this. People are telling you, first of all, Chris Rock says it's our number one job as dads is to keep our daughters out of that career. But here you are.
Hopefully my dad's not listening to this then.
People are telling you to your face that you're not who they expected you to be, or that you're making bad choices. You end up pregnant, which then drives that even more, where people are telling you.
But that's one of the big drivers, is being told you aren't ever going to be anything. You never will be anything.
That's a driver.
That's a massive driver. Wow. And if we're going there, that definitely came from my dad. You're ruining my life. You need to get rid of this. These really difficult things, along with, a high-end, close-knit community where I don't think that, my decisions were very respected, but honestly, I could care less what those people think. But a lot of my success has definitely been that I'll prove everyone wrong. Wow. And I think I've been trying to let go of that. Now, you know so much about me.
Yeah.
And it's been hard. It's still a driving force to be like, I'll prove everyone wrong.
Mm-hmm. And that from the furthest back you could remember.
Yeah.
Wow. So
I think there's like 4 basic driving forces that I've read about, and one of them is basically that. Like, I'll prove everybody wrong.
Yeah. So you remember the moment that you decided, I think I could actually do this. Mm-hmm. Do you remember if you had questions at all in your head after that, or was that just like I can do this, and from then on you just knew, or were there doubts?
I just knew.
Oh, wow.
I just knew.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then
Aiden is definitely going to be listening to this.
Oh yeah.
I never questioned that decision at all. Not once. And okay, well, here's where I'll start to cry, and then she's going to listen to this. But I cannot imagine the trajectory of my life if I had not had her. Mm-hmm. There's not a single part of me that it could imagine my life if I hadn't made that choice. It doesn't, no other life even exists. Mm-hmm.
How early on was she? I mean, I know your relationship and how awesome it is. And also
and how hard we butt
you
heads
mom
sometimes.
her so hard. Like, you are a mom.
You've spent time talking to her.
Oh yeah, and she's a lot like I am. And so, how early did you guys become partners? Like, because you have such a close relationship. Was it you and me against the world in an early age when you first saw her, where you were like, it's just you and me, or were you still feeling like it's just me?
No. That's an interesting question. When I think back, I mean, when she was a baby, it was the two of us, very much together. Mm-hmm. And I also didn't let a lot of other people into our world together. Mm-hmm. And we went through some really big hardships, some really hard things with her dad and his family. I went through some pretty rough and ugly court battles, and there were some really hard things. And that probably made me even more protective of just the two of us as our own little entity.
Mm-hmm. You were fighting for both of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I don't know how much we can say about this, but I've recently seen your heart come out in coaching somebody else as they were going through, a parental battle, where you've got one of our friends going through something, and you were just like, I'll never forget seeing you just like perk up, like, wait a second, I want to be part of this conversation because like I can help
I've been through this, and I know what the outcome's going to be, no matter if you battle something or not. And I made decisions when my daughter was little that, even though they were hard, so I think her dad went to prison when she was pretty little. Mm-hmm. And I made this very determined decision to take her to visit her dad once a month in the state penitentiary, because I wanted her to have a relationship, because I felt like that mattered beyond everything else. And so I think when talking to our friend about going through some really hard things, it's about just being the absolute best parent you can be, mm-hmm. right? Like, mm-hmm. nothing else matters. Like, you don't matter. Mm-hmm. They matter.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So you're going through, you actually brought her to see her dad.
I did. Mm-hmm. I did.
Wow.
And working and raising this kid. At the time, I was processing home loans, mm-hmm. and working my tail off.
And just being an intentional parent.
And just being,
saying, what does she need and what's right for her?
I think I didn't have much of a life other than working and taking care of her.
Mm-hmm. So you and her living alone, did you have like roommates move in and out, or is it mainly?
In the beginning, when I had her, we lived in a little apartment, and I had a roommate who was a friend and who's still the most amazing friend and involved in her life. Mm-hmm. I don't know what possessed him to be roommates with a pregnant 22-year-old. He was out of his mind. But we lived together until Aiden was 8 months old. I never could have done the first couple months of her life without him. Mm-hmm. He is such a great human and great friend, and has always been involved in Aiden's life. And then after that, we were mostly by ourselves in little apartments. I bought the first house when she was 6. I was so bound and determined to buy a house.
So this is 6 years after you had a baby that you didn't know you were going to have, and it's 6 years later and you bought a house.
I did.
How? Because just a second ago, you were like food stamps and all that.
And
I know.
You get
a processor
well,
job,
weren't we talking about the part about Sarah just makes things happen?
Yeah.
I just wanted the house. That's what I was so focused on. I thought if I could buy us a house, everything would be okay. Which is not true, by the way. Right. I just was like, because I grew up in one house. We never moved.
Oh, wow.
And so I think there was this stability mindset for me. Like, if I could just buy the house, mm-hmm. and I was still processing home loans. I bought the first house in 2006, and then the market completely tanked.
Oh, wow. Yeah, good timing on that.
I bought the first house. Let's see. I finished college, mm-hmm. turned 30, and bought the house all within 2 weeks of each other. So I had gone back to college too. I was working full time, raising her, going to school, and bought the house. It was nuts.
Oh my God.
I didn't sleep.
So at this point in time, are there people saying you're making poor decisions? Like, was there that challenge from people of like, are you doing too much? And you're just like, watch me. Or
no,
I
don't remember that. I just remember just doing my own thing, which is definitely that same part of me that you know now, where I'm doing my own thing. Do we get to talk about that part yet?
Oh yeah, we'll get there. Okay. Yeah, you're just like, I do what I want. So
maybe that's why I'm single.
Okay, so that attitude. I do what I want. So you buy your first house. You guys move in. It's not all fun and games. It's hard work.
It's still so much hard work. Our industry crashed, right? I'm making way less money. I'm standing in Fred Meyer's putting groceries back on the shelf.
Oh my gosh.
Constantly. That is one, like, I'll just talk about it now because I hope that everyone listening understands how blessed we are, how lucky we are. Like, one of the things that blows me away to this day is I can walk in a grocery store and buy anything I want. Like, anything can. Like, I can go in the grocery store and buy, I don't know, I walk out New Seasons and I don't even know what's in the bag for $125.
Right.
I can buy anything I want in the grocery store. It just endlessly fascinates me.
That's such perspective that's a big deal.
Because I
want to go back to like knowing that's a big deal. Like
it's still a huge deal to me.
You still think through that.
Oh, I still am constantly fascinated by that.
So you were putting food back on, or things back on the shelf in Fred Meyer.
Yes. I mean, I'm processing home loans. The whole entire industry has crashed. I bought this house. I was so determined to buy, making a certain amount of money, right? And then even though I wasn't a loan officer, I was processing, I was certainly making way less money. And it was a struggle. There were people then that were like, just short sale the house, let the house go. Yeah. And I'm like, I am not letting this house go. No way, no how.
It's so funny. It's almost like them saying that what you hear is different than what other people would hear. So if somebody's saying that to some people, they'd be like, oh, good. Like, this is an excuse they're giving me right now. Like, they're telling me that it's not my fault. And then they would make that decision to short sell the house. But when you hear people say that, you're like, oh, really? You think I can't handle this house? You think I can't handle this house? And you just like, all right, come on. Like, it's almost like,
I should mention it had like this huge backyard with these laurel hedges. It was like on a 1/4 acre. I don't know what I was thinking.
Oh
like, I could
gosh.
not manage it all. Out there mowing and trying to
because
battle this yard.
Oh my gosh. So you decide, I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to keep this house. You struggle to fight. When did you become a loan officer after that point?
Let's see. That was, I bought the house in 2006, crashed in 2008. I have been on my own as a loan officer for 10 years right now. Okay. So 2013.
13, yeah.
Would have been, I think, January 2013.
And the market starts to come back and you start building.
Yeah, but even then it wasn't easy. I think we see that a lot right now. People are like, this is hard. And I'm like, right. Yes, this is hard. And I certainly started out building, it wasn't easy. I think that was the other thing. So Aiden's 23. So it's like she's 13, 14, and I am trying to build this business. Like, I'm grinding like crazy, trying to, when I went out on my own and I went to a local company that Guild's since acquired. I work for Guild Mortgage now. And I got a bonus. I got given $8,000. So after tax, that was like $4,000, $4,500. And I think I had $3,000 in savings. That was it. And I was like, okay, I've got like 2 months to do something.
Double your savings. Wow.
I know, but I had like 2 months. I mean, I literally had like 2 months to start closing loans. My branch manager, who's still my branch manager now, I was like, why did you think I was going to do okay? He was like, you had to. You were scared. You didn't have any other option. But he does also say, he's like, I thought you'd be okay. I didn't know. I didn't realize what you would go on to do. I mean, he really honestly has said, like, I thought you'd be all right, but I had no idea you would do this.
But you fought for everything you've ever had. So you're just like, I guess we're going to have to fight, and just stepped up and did it.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
But in lieu of some other things, right? I mean, 70, 80-hour work weeks.
Right.
I know other people understand that too. I gave up some things to make that happen. Are
you okay that you did?
Yeah. Yes. I think, so much of this conversation has actually been about parenting, about Aiden. I think that there are some hard things about how much I was working and how much I was trying to build a business at a time where she was becoming a teenager. And there were definitely some things where I wish I had worked less in some ways. But I think when I look at us now and she works for me and she's doing so well and learning the business and wanting to do her own thing, I don't have regrets.
Does she work like you did? Like, is she like also working all the way through, putting in the time, doing all or does she have more of a work-life balance?
I think we're both working on work-life balance. She definitely has my work ethic. She right now, because one of my constant things is I want to work less, and then I just work anyways, and then we get in arguments.
Let's talk about you working less. So I try to describe you to friends. So first of all, let's describe our friendship. We have known each other for a while. You came on our Guatemala trip, and we knew each other pretty well up to the Guatemala trip.
We did. We've always connected really well. Yeah. Whenever I run into you at anything, we would always just end up sitting and talking about life together. And we did. But the Guatemala trip changed all that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go off topic or into too far into another topic, but that Guatemala trip when I was with you and we met our other friend that's part of our pod.
The three best friends.
Friend pod. Yeah, our little 3-person friend pod. It was at a time where that trip provided some things I really needed. I was making some decisions in my life about a relationship I'd been in for a long time. And really, at that point in time, I was on this mission, not just path, but mission of being a healthier human, dealing with childhood things, looking at a relationship that was really emotionally abusive and trying to understand why in the world I was in it. And you and our friend Hayden provided me this example of, and not just the two of you, everyone on that trip, right? I was the only woman on that trip.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And every day I saw men sitting down in the evening and being emotional, sharing their emotions, getting teary. Like, I needed to see that healthy men are emotional men. And that really, that was the beginning of our friendship altogether, especially as we went through COVID and each one of the three of us went through such difficult individual battles. But the two of you showing me just these examples, it was priceless at the time. It changed things for me.
Yeah, we cry every day on that trip. It's so funny. I always tell people, like, you don't know, everybody on Guatemala trip has a moment, right? Where it's like, okay, this is why I was here.
Well, we should tell people our Guatemala trips are mission trips. Well, they're mission trips. We don't have a ton of God in those trips. They're really community projects. He shows up, but he shows up when especially when we're talking in the evenings, when we're talking
about what you experienced in having somebody who you think, why are they smiling? Like, I have so much and I don't smile as much as they do with their so little. But those trips are, we've got another one coming up this coming January.
Put our plug in for our trip?
Plug in for January trip, January 6th, 2024.
Come on.
Those trips just started because I put on Facebook who wants to go to Guatemala, and it was because I had gone on a trip with my son that made me fall in love with those adventures and just the life of the part of my life that is the where I thought was I'm going to go give, when in reality it was I'm going to go become a deeper and better human, because that's what you do in Guatemala is you get to be the best version of yourself down there.
Agreed.
And so that is when we started talking more, and we have the three of us on a Marco Polo chat most days.
That spanned almost 4 years, 3.5 years at this point. 3.5 years of like all of us sharing our lives and the really hard stuff.
Totally. So what was funny is when you bought this van, and I want to talk about that because that's something that a lot of people go, wouldn't it be cool if, but then you just kind of did it. So you bought, I can't remember her name.
The van?
Yeah.
Paisley.
You bought, that's right.
Paisley the van.
You bought Paisley.
We were in Guatemala.
Yeah.
And then that was in January. And then in August of that same year, I left the relationship I'd been in for 13 years. I was incredibly unhealthy. A couple of interesting things. One, I leave this unhealthy relationship. I left my adventure partner, by the way, which you guys knew. And so I go and put this deposit on this Sprinter camper van the same week. Like, I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Yeah. Oh my well, because I needed something. I needed some new thing. I had to create this whole new daydream of a life. So I go and I put the deposit down on this van. And for everyone that wants to look it up, Storyteller Overland.
It's not a Sprinter camper van. It's the Storyteller Overland that is insanely
4-wheel drive,
amazing.
Sprinter.
Yeah. You could live off the grid in that thing.
I do live off the grid in it. And so I put that deposit on the van, and then it came the following June. I ordered it like the first week of September. It doesn't show up until the following June. And in all honesty, I go to pick it up and I was like, whoa, what did I buy?
Oh my God.
It's this huge thing.
Oh yeah.
I felt a little overwhelmed by it. But I had this whole concept of this next. Well, no, I had some concept. I knew I was going to like adventuring in the van because I love to adventure. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand that I would love it as much as I do.
Mm-hmm. So your anticipation was that you would take it out on a couple trips, or did you know you'd spend this much time in it?
No, I knew I would like it. I think you see people, when you talk about these giant overlanding vehicles, you see people buy them and then they're selling them and they're like, it's never been off road. I've never used the shower. I've never used the bathroom. And I knew I was going to use it. I didn't realize how happy it would make me, how much, from following my adventures, I'm happier on the road exploring. It's been one more way to push myself too, right? In this constant, quest to always be reaching for the next thing.
And to do what you want.
And to do what I want. And to do it differently.
Freedom.
And to do it differently than everyone else. So I live in the van half the time right now, and the big goal, or not the big goal, what's happening next is about 75% of the time. I have a Starlink satellite dish on top. I can work completely off the grid. I do a lot of the time.
You're still running your business.
I am.
From the van.
I am. There's some days, you've seen me crying. 10-hour days in Zion in a snowstorm working in the van. Like there's been some long work days, and then there's just been these perfect days where I feel like I have everything balanced and yeah.
It's so interesting finding that thing, because I talk about the owner's manual a lot, and like, what are the things that you do that make you the healthiest? And it's funny when you're on some of the videos with the three of us, you'll be not doing very well. And it's like, I'm sitting there going, just get in the van.
Just leave.
Get in the van, because it really is, for you, that's where you think, right? And that's where you smile, and that's where you can let go and like not get so caught up in all of the details of the daily. You still do all of it. You're just doing it from a place where you want to be.
Yeah. And I'm making something happen even when it's hard to make it happen. I think one of the things, there's a couple of things about like, well, how is this happening? And business is still happening. And that's been some struggles with explaining to people that I work with, this is how I live. I'm not on vacation right now. People are like, I'm so sorry to interrupt your vacation. I'm like, this is not vacation. This is how I live.
Right.
That's been a transition. And then everyone's been so supportive of that too. I mean, I've had funny client conversations like, let me get this right. You live in a van and you're giving me advice on buying a house.
Right down by the river.
Well, I own 4 houses, so that's why I'm living in the van. So I'm like really well positioned to give you advice.
Right.
But people have been incredibly supportive. And I think also the other thing that's happened is that there's a lot I'm going to stumble over my words. There's a lot of people that are telling me, you're such an inspiration. I wish I could be living like you, or what you're doing is amazing. And it's been not confusing to hear, but interesting, because I still feel, you see me all the time when on video, I still feel like I'm figuring everything out as I go. I certainly do not feel like I have life figured out.
Which is part of the adventure.
And if I ever did, it would be all over and it'd be boring and I'd be done. But I think
it's not
that's been an interesting, and I guess I get to be an inspiration by just constantly pushing forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We're going to get into something now. I think we're still good.
Are we good on time? What else do we get to get into?
We're getting into something that we may cut the entire part. Okay. So if this is continuing, it means that this conversation worked out that we could release this podcast.
Well,
if not, they won't hear any of this.
Okay.
Here's my big question for you. We're going to get, I hope this
Are we going really deep?
Yeah. I hope this isn't too much like therapy. Here's my question for you. So much of your life is defined by you do what you want. You do what people don't think you can do. Nobody challenging you is right, because you will show them by outperforming where they thought you could go, right? So you are a fighter. You do not avoid struggle. You will struggle and you will make things work, and you will become who you want to become. How long were you in that relationship?
With
13 years you were in a relationship. How does that girl, and again, we can cut this whole thing, but I know there are such strong women.
I don't want to cut it because I want to help.
I
don't want to cut it because I want to help other people. Are you asking how I am able to do all that and then lived
in that scenario
for so long?
And by the way, this is for my daughters. This is for everybody's. I'm going to cry now. This is for everybody's.
I don't want you to cut this because I think it's incredibly important. I feel like I've always had this one part of my life. So now I'm going to totally cry.
I know. I'm already there. You can see it. Sorry.
In lieu of ever being able to have what I want, or not just want or need, probably deserve from a relationship with another human, a man, I have pushed myself in all these other directions, right? And I know how to do those things so well, right? I know how to push like crazy. I know how to be successful. I know how to close tons of home loans. But I honestly feel like when it comes to that other part of my life, I'm dyslexic. I don't understand. Mm-hmm. I feel like I can't read it in a book, and I've not seen very good examples of how to have a healthy relationship with someone. And I think right now it's really scary still. Like, of all the things that I'll go conquer, right? Mm-hmm. That's terrifying.
Wow.
I don't know how to do it. And I feel guilty saying it, but I let somebody treat me for 13 years in a way it's embarrassing to tell other people about, because they see me as this incredibly successful person that's pushed so hard and done these things. And if I tell people about how I was in a relationship that way, it just completely is so contradictory to them. It doesn't make sense that this person that's so outwardly all these things would then be in this other form of their life where it's so different. And all I can say is I just had always thought if I could just be more perfect. And so I guess if we're telling your daughters, my daughter, anything, is like, just be you. People like you for you. But that's still something I really struggle with. We can bring up me crushing on a guy recently and just being absolutely thrown for a loop. It's easier to just walk away from that for me because it's not something that I have mastered. It's not something I understand. And it is terrifying. Mm-hmm. And I'm 47.
It's okay.
But I think there's overcompensation.
Right.
In other parts. Like that's not that underbelly is not something I necessarily want people to see.
But I think it's so common. I know a lot of people who have fallen into these bad situations who win at every part of their life. And then there's this one part, like, that seems to be the giant struggle or the piece that they haven't mastered or whatever. And
as my counselor recently told me, I'm just underdeveloped in that area, perhaps a little overdeveloped in other areas. I still don't know how, I guess, other than trying to move forward through fear, which is so funny because like in the van, I'm traveling, I'm scared. I have a client situation, I'm scared, right? But those fears are almost like thrill fears, whereas this other part of my life is actual real fear. Mm-hmm. Maybe of people knowing who I really am and not liking me. Oh gosh. Yeah.
I get that.
I think that's the big one.
Yeah.
Is that people wouldn't like me. I don't know. Now I'm going to cry. That's my big fear in life. If we want to talk about like big fears, like I have this horrible fear of people not liking me.
I get it. What's the, on the positive note, what was the feeling coming out of that? That many years of that, you get the van. I mean, was there a...
Oh, come on. You watched me. I mean,
there's
there was
that are
massive heartbreak. I mean, so hard. I mean, I just threw myself into work even harder than I already worked to just avoid some of the heartache of the whole situation. The other person is not a bad or evil person. Who's just a man with a lot of his own trauma. Mm-hmm. And I just suffered at the other end of that. And some of that was my choice to do so. But a lot of, if this gets to be in the podcast, like the last couple years of my life, and you've watched me grow and change, and the van is giving me more independence, but I like myself more than I've ever liked myself. I just feel more me. Mm-hmm. I'm happy with who I am. I like who I am. I mean, the overalls, right? I messed around with like, well, do I like big earrings? And do I like overalls? And what do I like to do? And it definitely has been a journey of self-discovery of who I am just by myself, not when I'm trying to please another person or be something that they want me to be, but what do I like to do? Who am I? And that's felt, you've watched it. I mean, it's been great. It feels good. I've been able to watch you and Hayden tell me you're just more you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's it. Like I'm more me. And work, like if we go back to loop back to work or mortgage, like I hit a certain pinnacle of success just by grinding like crazy. Mm-hmm. But the big success came when I let go of everything else.
Mm-hmm. Wow. All right. So somebody sitting in that situation, I always think of like who's going to be affected in these podcasts. And I know there are people still in that situation that haven't come out the other side. You're saying getting through a tough relationship situation, knowing that you need to moving out of it. It's not always going to be easy, even in those first few months of.
I mean, did you not see me cry for like 6 months straight?
Yeah. But then over time, it all gets to where you're going to find yourself on the other side of that. And it's okay to walk out of something, to walk into something new. Could you have done anything different in that exit that would have bounced you back faster? Or did you go through the process?
No, it was just hard. It was just, I mean, come on, we all know that by this point in life, that is just hard stuff.
Yeah.
There's just no way around that. Yeah. But I think that beauty on the other side and also the success, like the things that came together because I decided I wanted to be a healthier human. Mm-hmm.
It worked.
It's working. We got a little further to go.
Constant working process, but yeah, it's it is so good that you've gotten through that. You gotten to where you are right now. Surrounding yourself with the right people, and I count myself as the right people.
You're definitely
getting out and doing your thing and finding your adventure. I definitely tell people about you. I'm like, oh, you got to meet Sara. Like, she's living the adventure, and you don't run into a lot of people that are willing to say yes to it, and then still be able to reach that societal like success while still reaching success within yourself. And to be able to balance those two things the way you have has been really inspiring. So we're going to cut it there. I think we're leaving that in the podcast. I don't know a reason to take it out. So
I hope it's in the podcast.
I'm happy everybody got to hear that. And I thank you for sharing that. You've been incredibly vulnerable. I think you're going to help a ton of people by listening. Good. And I think you're awesome. And I'm just happy to be on your journey. So with that, we're shutting her down. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.